the narcissist, and timekeeping. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor, continuing to educate you about all aspects of narcissism as seen through my worldview as a narcissistic psychopath with an unrivaled understanding of the way that the various types of narcissists see the world, function, and operate, sharing this information to aid your understanding and extending, of course, my legacy. Time. A precious resource, something that we cannot stop the advance of, and not something that we can go back and alter, despite human beings having this particular preoccupation, which is a terrible weakness, of being preoccupied with the past. Once the past is done, it's done. We don't possess time machines. You can't clamber into one and go back in time to undo what has been done. You can either deal with the consequences of actions in the past, or you cannot, and thus you move on. What you don't do is sit lamenting, reminiscing, contemplating those problems and difficulties that have arisen in the past. That is redundant and not logical. This demonstrates what a precious resource time is, and many of you who have been involved with a narcissist will have come across the way that the narcissist utilizes timekeeping. First, we examine the way that the narcissist utilizes timekeeping with regard to you. So here is where you are expected to be Johnny or Jane on the spot, that you're expected to be on time, that you are expected to know precisely when you should turn up, even though the narcissist might not even tell you. That the narcissist will, of course, stipulate a time when you're expected to be there, and woe betide you if you do not. If you are but a fragment late, that wounds the narcissist, because you were meant to be there at 7 p.m. And if you turn up at 7:02 p.m., notwithstanding an excellent explanation as to the fact that unfortunately there was a terrorist incident on the tube line, which meant that you were delayed, and therefore you got off at the nearest stop and you ran across town to get there and have only turned up 2 minutes late, as you're stood there perspiring, it matters not. You will invariably be lambasted for your tardiness, notwithstanding the legitimacy of your excuse and the fact that you present perspiring away, and it's plastered all over the newsfeed that indeed there was a terrorist incident that caused the delay to the tube. That's irrelevant when it comes to the view of the narcissist. You were meant to be there, and the fact that you were not there threatened the narcissist's innate need for control. That meant that you made the narcissist feel weak, feel vulnerable, and then the narcissism kicked in. However, at the point by which you've not turned up, the narcissist can't assert control over you directly because you're not there. So it might be that the narcissism compels the narcissist to telephone you. Where are you? And that's why you get these irate messages. If, for instance, you were underground and therefore had no signal, your failure to answer the phone or the failure for it to ring, even though it's not your fault, wounds the narcissist even further. The fact that a text message is sent but cannot be replied to, again because you are incommunicado, wounds the narcissist. So if you find yourself in the scenario that I've just described or something similar, 1. Your late arrival, of course, causes wounding. 2. The fact that the narcissist then tries to assert control over you by ringing you and messaging you, to which there is no response, wounds the narcissist further. This means that the narcissist has no means of us directly asserting control over you, and as the seconds tick by, the wounding continues. The fuel level is dropping. The narcissist has been in effect holed below the line. That fuel is spilling out of the narcissist along with the fact that control has not been obtained. The narcissist might be able to assert control over you indirectly by calling somebody else and saying, "Have you seen Jemima? Do you know where she is?" Or if the narcissist is with somebody else awaiting your appearance, turning to them and go, "Typical, she's always late." Note the use of the word always, smearing you to that person who nods in agreement about your tardiness, and therefore that gives the narcissist that unconscious sense of control. But if an indirect assertion of control cannot be established, then all the narcissist can do is stand there and become more infuriated by your late appearance until The narcissism may well compel the narcissist to walk off, and then when you get there, even though you're 2 minutes late, to find that there's nobody there. And you think, well, they're running a little bit late, and you, exhibiting patience as a consequence of your emotional empathy, stand there awaiting the arrival of the narcissist. 5 minutes have gone by, it's now 7 minutes after the allotted meeting time. The narcissist is nowhere to be found, and therefore you politely call the narcissist to ascertain their whereabouts, wondering perhaps they've been held up. Of course, when you call, you may well be roundly ignored. Why? Because this is now the narcissist's opportunity to assert control over you by giving you a silent treatment by not answering the call in order to directly assert control over you and also to subconsciously punish you. In some instances, the narcissist will answer, "What do you want?" Or, "Oh, there you are." And when you say, "Where are you?" the narcissist says, "You didn't turn up. So I left. You weren't coming. But I only arrived 2 minutes late. You didn't wait long." Of course, saying such a comment is challenge fuel. "I waited long enough," yells the narcissist at you, fury ignited as a consequence of the wounding that had taken place earlier on, and of course your challenge to them. Argument ensues, and invariably you will find yourself lambasted until you apologise, and the narcissist might return, dependent on where they are, having now got control over you. Or, more likely, the narcissist just puts the phone down on you, asserting control over you by withdrawing actively from you, and the event has been ruined, even though you were just 2 minutes late, with a legitimate excuse. Your failure to adhere to appropriate timekeeping is used against you by the narcissist. Why? If you are late, you wound the narcissist. If the narcissist is able to get in contact with you while you're running late, you will, of course, be criticised for it. Just hurry up and get here as quick as you can. Phone put down. Your apology of running late and the explanation provided will, of course, then give the narcissist control, as they stand there, the narcissist never likes to be kept waiting. Why? We are the centre of the universe. Our time is more important than anybody else's, and you not turning up when you ought to have done, notwithstanding the legitimacy of your explanation and excuse for being late, is irrelevant to us. You must not keep us waiting. Similarly, of course, there are instances where you might turn up somewhat early, 15 minutes early, and in those circumstances you turn up at the narcissist's house, and you may actually, in those circumstances, be told, "You're too early, come back in 15 minutes," and have the door slammed in your face. How rude, you think. But again, you turning up when you ought not to have turned up offends the narcissist's sense of control. You may well have some explanation thrown in your face. "I was busy garnishing the aubergines and therefore wasn't ready." Of course, you think to yourself, "Doesn't matter, you could have invited me in, I'd have sat in the living room or sat in the kitchen and spoken to you." Of course, some narcissists, better at maintaining the veneer and able to assert control in a more charming fashion, would say, "You've arrived, how delightful, do come on in, would you like a nice glass of Rioja?" But there are certain narcissists, more likely your lesser evolved ones, that will react in that way even when you're early. And therefore, you find yourself in this eggshell situation, as you invariably do with a narcissist, whereby turn up early, you're criticised and provoked because you threaten the narcissist's control by not turning up at the appropriate time, possibly catching the narcissist before he or she has had an opportunity to deliver the final touches to what they're cooking, baking, or even to their own appearance. Or, even worse, you turn up late, with the consequences that I've just described. That's essentially how your timekeeping is used against you. But what about the narcissist's timekeeping? Well, it will come as no surprise to you to know that we turn up when we determine that we will turn up, and you should not expect us at any other time. When we appear is exactly the right time that we are to appear. Some narcissists are fastidious about the time that they will turn up because it's their method of asserting control, and their narcissism dictates that by turning up when they say they'll turn up, that enables them to manage a facade of punctuality. But in many instances, narcissists are horrendous in terms of turning up on time and regularly run late. Why? Well, that's evidenced by their lack of accountability. And, of course, their lack of emotional empathy for the person affected by their tardiness, their sense of entitlement to be doing what they want. Invariably, it isn't the case that the narcissist consciously decides that they will turn up late in order to aggravate the victim, although that can sometimes occur where the narcissist's way of asserting control over you deliberately turns up late, a strange kind of silent treatment in a way. More usually, the late arrival is a consequence of the narcissist being preoccupied with something else. I'll give you an example. Let us say that you are the intimate partner primary source of an upper mid-range narcissist. He is at work and has arranged to meet you for a drink after work at 7 p.m. You arrive shortly beforehand, finding that he is in the pub that you've arranged to meet. You were going to meet at the Dog and Duck, you wander in, you scout around, and he's not there. He is at the office, and he's preoccupied in having a chat with Annie No-Knickers, a buxom secretary that he's taken a shine to. You're the intimate partner primary source in devaluation, which means that it's fair game for the narcissist to flirt with other people with potential of drawing them in as a replacement for you. Here, the narcissist is preoccupied in talking to Annie No-Knickers. You simply don't exist. He's chatting away, telling some jokes, giving her a wink, flirting with her, asserting control over her in a benign fashion and drawing in her fuel. After 5 minutes of waiting, you send a text message, a polite one, saying, "Hi, I'm in the Dog and Duck. What would you like to drink?" You have now come back on the radar. You have to be controlled. The fact is, your message is one that is benign. You're not lambasting the narcissist or criticising them, you're asking what they would like to drink. And therefore, the narcissist will respond to that in a favourable way by stating, "I'll have a vodka and tonic, with you in 2 minutes." And thus the message is sent. You reply, "OK," thus giving a little dollop of fuel to the narcissist, whilst also signalling that you're under control. The narcissist now returns back to Annie No-Knickers because she stood in front of him. You are forgotten about. The agreement to be there at 7 p.m, or now in 2 minutes' time, is forgotten about, as the narcissist focuses on talking to her. 5 minutes goes by, the narcissist has not turned up, you send another text message. "Where are you?" ? This, of course, is challenge fuel. You're seeking to make the narcissist accountable for his whereabouts, and you're not allowed to do that. Therefore, it threatens his sense of control. In some instances, the narcissist would just ignore your message and continue to chat up Annie No-Knickers. In this instance, he's more likely as an upper mid-ranger to respond, "Sorry, just dealing with a telephone call. Be there shortly." It's a lie, but it's manufactured for the purpose of asserting control over you. You reply, "OK, hurry up please." You show that you're under control. You are then forgotten about as he turns back to Annie No-Knickers and continues to drink in her more proximate fuel, which, whilst not as potent as yours because you're the intimate partner primary source, is more plentiful because your communication is through text message whilst she is stood in front of the narcissist, and therefore there is a greater provision of fuel from the proximity, the physical proximity. A few more minutes go by, and you then respond again, and this time you express your irritation. "Where the hell are you? I'm sick of waiting. If you're not here in 2 minutes, I'm going home." This is a clear piece of challenge fuel and a threat to the control of the narcissist. Some narcissists would again ignore it, meaning that you go home, and he then tries to coerce Annie No-Knickers to go for a drink. In this instance, the upper mid-ranger, recognising that the threat to control is such that he needs to be dealt with, comments, "I'm on my way," and at that point gets up, says to Annie No-Knickers, "Got to shoot, important meeting." He's not going to let her know that he's meeting his girlfriend. He wouldn't do that. That would threaten the potential control that he's asserting over the potential for an affair with Annie No-Knickers. So he explains that he's got an important business meeting or he's meeting a friend in the pub and that he will see her tomorrow, wink wink, enjoy talking to you. She smiles and gives a coquettish look, indicating that she's under control, has provided fuel, and the narcissist races off to meet his girlfriend in the Dog and Duck. "Where have you been?" asks the girlfriend. "Sorry about that. John in accounts needed my input on X, Y, and Z. Revision of history, lie, but it's done to nullify the threat to control." Why was the narcissist late? He simply doesn't value the time of his intimate partner primary source because she is in the sustained devaluation. He acts with a sense of entitlement to engage with the intimate partner secondary source as he sees fit, by flirting with her, and each time that he asserts control over his girlfriend, she disappears in effect. She goes off the edge and disappears into the ether, and he's back to dealing with the intimate partner secondary source secretary. This continues until such time as the threat to control is so great that his narcissism recognizes that he has to get off his backside and actually go to the dog and duck. Otherwise, there will be a greater loss by the intimate partner primary source leaving, and the accompanying wounding that's associated with that. Remember, the narcissism is a self-defense mechanism. But all of that adds up to him turning up late, not intentionally, but because he was focused on something else. It might have been that he would be focused on doing his work, because that was enabling him to assert control over people and draw fuel, and at that juncture is deemed more important than the interaction with his intimate partner primary source who's in sustained devaluation. When it comes to timekeeping, certain narcissists are fastidious about it as part of their facade. Often, they keep to it, and it is done as a consequence of when you're in the seduction period, you're treated well, and therefore the narcissist adheres to timekeeping. But often, and this can also be a red flag, the narcissist repeatedly turns up late, offers rather incredible excuses as to their lateness, or doesn't offer any explanation at all. And this is representative of the fact that their narcissism is causing them to focus on something else, and you are quite simply forgotten about. There's no emotional empathy for how it affects you, no sense of accountability, and acting with a sense of entitlement. Repeated lateness is a narcissistic indicator. Just because somebody's routinely late doesn't mean that they are a narcissist, but it is an indicator for the reasons that I've explained. And if you find that you have a colleague, a lover, a boyfriend, a girlfriend, a family member who is repeatedly late, you might want to look at what their other behaviours are to see if there's a raft of other indicators that might mean that you're dealing with a narcissist. Where you know you're dealing with a narcissist, you're able to now understand why they are behaving in the way that they do with regard to your timekeeping and also theirs. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.